Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have lately seen a lot of supply chain disruptions. There have been deliveries that didn't come through, suppliers that went bankrupt, and also providers that couldn't produce anymore as they run out of raw material. As a consequence, two types of calls have been issued towards industry in a lot of our press and political circles. First one, let's backshore, and the second, let's recur to European or national suppliers and build local and continental supply chains again. That sounds very courageous and very constructive as well at first sight, but it may not be so self-evident to shape supply chains to our own will or to change plant locations as if we were talking about moving boxes or rolling factories that you can just pack up and install somewhere else. Why is this not so self-evident? Because factories tend to become embedded over time, which means that they develop a kind of symbiosis with their environment, either from a production perspective and or from a sales perspective. As regards to production perspective, let me tell you an anecdote. In 2011, Barack Obama attended a dinner in Silicon Valley with several captains of industry from the United States. And one of the guests there was the late Steve Jobs of Apple. During the dinner, Obama asked him, Steve, what would it take to make iPhones again in the United States? And Jobs' answer to that question was as follows: those jobs aren't coming back. What Jobs had seen already back then was that choosing to manufacture in a country like China is not just a matter of seizing cost advantages, but also of getting access to a tight-knit and well-endowed set of producers and development facilities that outperform many production networks in Western economies. So companies that produce and conduct R&D in such places enjoy insidership benefits and agglomeration economies. As a consequence, if those same companies start saying now, we're going to close our doors there, they will need to find and build the same kind of environment elsewhere. And that may take time, and it may even turn out to be more costly. The other way that factories become embedded over time is when they are located amidst the geographic markets that they ought to serve. And in this regard, we notice that a lot of the output that Western factories produce in countries like China is not intended for export markets anymore. On the contrary, an increasing share of the output from Western-owned factories in China is destined for local markets, be that China itself or larger parts of Asia. In this regard, last year, we did a study at Orchestra on the potential for backshoring production activities out of China and wider Asia and to repatriate those activities back to the Basque country or its near surroundings. And what we found was that this possibility is only an option for those factories that are not producing for the Asian markets. And that is only the case for a minority of them. Altogether, if you look then at Western factories that are located in China or in Asia, other parts of Asia, you'll find that only a fraction of them can become footloose and eligible for backshoring. Regarding the possibility of substituting imports from China by goods manufactured inside Europe, Spain, or the Basque country in order to feed our industrial supply chains with local inputs, that may be tricky as well. Business-to-business imports from China concern largely industrial goods of lower added value. But the prices for these goods are often so much better than what European suppliers could charge that it is improbable that we can neutralize China's cost advantage for these inputs. Okay, China's cost advantage for these goods may be a consequence of social dumping and other practices that we don't like, but the price differences are real and they are considerable, and they clearly drive industrial bias towards remote sourcing strategies. Moreover, in the present situation where an economic meltdown cannot be discarded, cost competitiveness may even become more important. All in all then, I think we should relativize the potential of backshoring and the potential of making the European or the Basque industry fully reliant again on local, national, or continental supply chains in the post-COVID-19 era. Does that mean that there's nothing we can do to get a better control over our supply networks? And does it imply that there aren't any companies for whom backshoring or turning to European suppliers can be an option? Well, based on work that we are currently undertaking with SPRI, the Basque government, and European Cluster Collaboration Platform, I see three areas for action. First, those companies, SMEs in particular, for whom working with Chinese suppliers is only marginally better or cheaper than purchasing from nearby located suppliers, these companies can now decide to tie more into European supply chains. Second, big firms with considerable purchasing powers can go more for dual sourcing, diversifying their supplier base, testing European suppliers more systematically, and if that turns out well, perpetuate those relationships. Three, apply more vigilance in the form of business contingency or business continuity plans, apply supplier monitoring systems in a more stringent manner, and using real-time big data tracking and tracing intelligence. And these are three areas where, for example, cluster associations can help coordinate actions. To finish, we can think of two encores. Those are partly for policymakers. One, keep investing in Industry 4.0 to avoid offshoring and to retain production and supply networks over here. Two, tackle the issue of external costs. What this pandemic and its effects on supply chain issues shows is that there are a lot of external costs that are not factored into the real prices that we pay if we acquire goods that are made in unsafe places or in places where health, safety, and environment are not duly respected and protected. Therefore, it seems justified to become more demanding in that regard, possibly by means of regulations, certifications, and who knows, sanctions. That is, if we are brave enough to take that path and do not fear that this may backfire on our own possibilities to sell in the places that we consider to be underperforming or non-compliant with such sustainability standards.